Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez here. As you may be very well aware, the printer companies are not making it very easy for us to be able to use third-party products. In fact, they explicitly state on their new specs, when you look at a new spec for a P900, P700, or Pro-300 for Canon Pro-200, it explicitly says that you are not to use third-party products. Okay, well, the EPSONs, they're out of the question. Any of the new models, you will be using OEM products because there is no option at this point whatsoever. There are no resetters, and even if there were, they would not work because they have blocked the ability for the printer to continue seeing the same color ID code. Now, keep in mind, folks, I get a lot of complaints about me talking and not getting to the point. The point of this video is to discuss why with Canon printers we can still disable ink monitoring and allow us at our own peril continue to print with cartridges that are able to be refilled, because they haven't really blocked those from refilling like EPSON has. So again, this is not going to be a demo. Okay, be aware of that. I will be making demo videos a little bit later. As you all may know, I am not in the best of health, so I have cut back on my production of videos to maybe once or even at the very most twice a week, plus the Sunday live streams. So, Pro-1000, Pro-100, Pro-10, those are fine. We can still refill those. There are options, either resetters for the Pro-100, Pro-10, Pro-100 requires a modification step before you can refill those cartridges. The Pro-10 can be refilled directly without any kind of modification. All you need is a little gram scale to monitor the weight. In other words, because it is an opaque cartridge, you really do not know how much actual physical ink you are putting into your cartridge. Once you reach 32 grams, you know that you have ink and no air in it. If you cannot get past 27 grams total weight, then you know that there is a gap of air in that bag that's preventing liquid ink from entering. And you have to expel that. Again, I'm not going to demonstrate that. I'm just telling you, okay? So, as you can see right here, I have a set of 1 through 12 cartridges that I am going to be refilling. And why should I refill these and not the ones that are internally loaded at this moment? Well, because when I attempted to disable ink monitoring, it did not allow me to do it if I had ARC chips, auto reset chips, which don't work anyway. They only work one time. They give you one run. When they reach empty, if you then proceed to attempt to do the ink level disabling process, it does not work. So you have to have cartridges with original chips, okay? And the original chips you can recognize by the fact that the little holder is black, okay? Not white. These are the ones that you purchase from Precisioncolors. They have actually mounted the individual chips onto actual holders. It's a very tedious process. You would not want to do this, believe me. So each chip will cost you $12. Now your options are two. Either you replace the chip with one of these for $12, okay? And then you can vacuum fill or pressure fill your cartridge. I have a video demonstrating that process. I'm going to be doing another one, okay, for those folks that have a problem searching, okay? I'm going to redo another one and I'm going to post it pretty soon, okay? I'll show you how to do that. But the best and easiest way, obviously, is if you can then install a plug, okay? I have on my Amazon affiliate page a 530 seconds plastic drilling drill. That means a drill made out of steel, but meant for drilling in plastic. And the reason for that is that you require a larger attack angle on the edge of the drill bit so that it cuts by shearing rather than literally it just kind of compresses the hole, and it does not provide you with a very accurate diameter hole, which you must have so that the plug fits properly. The same thing goes with the Pro-100. A lot of people are having problems with leaky cartridges after you modify them, and that's because your hole is too big. You did a sloppy job drilling it, and the plug does not fit tightly, and so then it leaks. I have done the straw demonstration where I fill the straw full of water, and as long as I'm sealing the top end of the straw, the water does not dribble out. As soon as I let go, in other words, create a non-sealed condition, the water immediately pours out. The same thing will happen to your cartridges. You fill them full of ink, you put them in your printer, and the next morning they're empty, and you don't know that because it still indicates that it's full. You reset it to full, so it's going to indicate full. But in reality, it is empty, and I mean really, really empty. You start printing, and then you're going to harm your printhead because that cartridge is providing the printhead with nothing but air. And air does not cool those resistors that heat the ink to boiling point. Only the liquid ink cools the resistors. Very tricky situation. So the best and easiest way is to simply buy a set of pre-modified cartridges. Why would you want to put yourself through that torture of maybe they're okay, maybe they're not okay? That's the ones that you modify yourself. Let Rick Johnson take care of that for you. $60 is cheap insurance that when you start refilling, you will start refilling properly. You have to provide your printer with properly modified cartridges. But let's go to this one. This one here is the best printer, okay, for this type of work. And the reason being is because it still allows you to disable ink monitoring. And that simply happens. Let's just assume that I was using OEM cartridges. I never ever loaded any kind of these single-use chips or even the auto reset, the fake auto reset chips that turned out to be single-use chips anyway. So I reach empty. By empty, that means that the cartridge physically is empty because it's not only using the computations that it actually performs, measuring the amount of ink being passed through that particular set of yellow nozzles, for instance. So it pretty much knows, and then it also counteracts that by measuring the amount of ink or the level of ink inside that internal compartment. Let's stick with yellow. And then when there's no more ink to replenish that level, it immediately kicks in with that empty warning. You will go low and then immediately go empty. You'll get the red X. At that point, you press the stop button. It's the second one below the power. I don't know whether you can see this, but it's the second one below the power on button for 5 seconds. At that point, it will permit you to continue printing. The printer will tell you that, actually the driver will tell you. If you continue printing, you may run out of ink. Of course you will. So what we do now is we'll remove that cartridge and fill it. We're going to inject 80 ml of ink. Whether you do it with the pressure method or whether you do it by removing a plug that you install on a hole you drill with that kind of plastic drill bit, okay? And this will allow you to then seal that plug. And I tested this underwater by pressurizing the internal compartment with air, and not one single bubble came out. In fact, what normally would happen is that this plug would just pop right out if you increase the internal pressure. There is no pressurization of these cartridges, so that's not a danger. But as a precaution, I would say make sure your hole is drilled accurately. The type of drill bit does a very clean job. You will still have to use something like a scalpel blade or a number 11 X-Acto blade or a razor blade, and just trim the edges in case there's any kind of little bit of plastic rising up. You want a nice flat condition. Let me show you what that looks like. You see that? It's a very accurately drilled hole. Now once you drill this hole, if you feel like it, although it is not necessary, unless something went inside. Hold it under the faucet until it is fully filled with water. Now removing that water is going to be very difficult unless you depress the plunger here, the so-called poppet valve. And for that, I just take a plain tip syringe, and I will demonstrate all of this on a video once I start processing all of these cartridges here. So right now it's just a lecture, so put up with me for a minute. Well, not a minute, you know better than that. You will then hold this over your sink. You will then remove the plunger from your syringe. So you just have the syringe body with no plunger. Insert that or a tip, one of the refilling tips. You want to be able to plunge that open. Don't use a needle, don't use anything sharp without harming that poppet valve or the O-ring. So the best thing is to use a plain tip syringe without the plunger. As soon as you poke it in and you depress that plunger or that poppet valve, the water will just pour right back out. Okay? And that's all you need to do. Do that 2 or 3 times. Let it sit dry. Put it in a warm area with the plug hole open. Let it dry and then fill it full of ink. Literally, like so. Inject 80 ml. You are going to need a 100 ml syringe. Again, I will show you how to do that. Just not now. Right now we're just talking about how to perform these functions. 80 ml. That will fill it to about this point here. That's what you want. You want to maintain a little bit of an air gap. Once it is full, all you have to do is plug it back up. It is ready to put back in. Okay? Let's assume that you have already, maybe in your Pro-1000 owner's career, you have acquired 2 sets of these. Well, just like I do with the other printers, modify them as needed while you have a replacement cartridge in there so that you have time to perform this operation. Then, when you are totally ready, that's when you disable ink monitoring. Okay, you have to have a cartridge ready to go. Unless you're really fast, drilling, cleanup, and refilling, and popping back in within a few minutes, you know, after you disable ink monitoring. Yeah, if you're that good, then by all means do that. But I would always recommend to have spares. Now, I have collected quite a few spares, so I'm ready to go. I'll be able to replace them all. Now, will this apply to a larger Canon printer, like the Pro-2000, 2100, 4000, 4100, and even the 6000? Okay, of course it will. They all utilize the same kind of large cartridge. The setup ones are, I think, 130 milliliters in total volume. Those will only prime the ink system and give you a bit of ink to play around with. Soon after that, they're going to need replacement anyway. So, this is the best way to go, folks. It's expensive. Okay, retail price is about $300. You can find them for less on eBay. I have a link for these OEM with a 700 ml chip, 700 ml of ink for $225, free shipping anywhere in the USA, and it is priority shipping, so you'll get it very quick. This is really the best way to go. I have 5 of these cartridges that I use to refill these, and then the rest of them I use the third-party ink. So I'm using about a third OEM load, okay, as a hybrid set. Now, if I did have a 2000 or a 2100 or larger, I would go ahead and then these cartridges that I have bought, I never used the chip. They still have a full chip. They never went through one of those printers. All I did, see, this chip remained unused. All I did was extract ink through the ports or drilling and pouring the ink out on bottles until I have a empty cartridge. Either way, any way you can extract that ink without harming the cartridge body, especially at this end, I would recommend. And then once it is empty, remember, we can put a plug on either end, and these sit vertically. You can then have an empty cartridge that can be refilled with the inks of your choice and used as if it was an original out of the bag cartridge, because that chip is still unused. Okay, now Precisioncolors is going to be prepping some of these cartridges, okay, because they have been buying OEM cartridges from this source that I have for a very long time now. So they have amassed a ton of these empties. So what they will do, because you already have a 130 ml cartridge on your 2100 or 2000 or larger, they're going to sell you the cartridge body modified and washed, okay, without this, okay. You're going to use your own, unless you pay extra for the chip body right here. That's going to be a little bit more costly. Now, there's going to be single-use chips for those as well, okay. So hear me out. Here's the deal. You take your 130 ml starter cartridge, you remove the cap. You can then do whatever you wish with that empty. You need that chip, okay? You still need that chip. And then you're going to replace it with one of these big units. Oh, but the chip will not match the volume. Doesn't matter, you're going to disable ink monitoring anyway. You're going to remove that cartridge, that 130 ml cartridge from your printer when it reaches empty. All the printer knows at this point is that you have an empty chip, and you have two options: replace it or disable ink monitoring. So we're going to disable ink monitoring, smack that chip and cap onto the big 700 ml empty cartridge, modified of course, and that way you'll be able to refill it to full, insert it in your printer. You've already disabled ink monitoring. It'll see it at extremely low levels. That's what it will show on your driver when you are visualizing it on your computer, and you can continue printing. Now your job, of course, now is to figure out what the empty one weighs, because you're going to get an empty cartridge, and what it weighs when it is full, okay? And that will keep you abreast as to what your physical levels might be. So for instance, for here, I know it weighs 32 grams empty. So I'm going to be periodically checking these cartridges, weighing them. Okay, I don't want to get anywhere near 32. I want to be around 50 before I begin to worry about refilling them. They'll be all topped off. They will all have plugs, easy as pie. Okay, do a little bit of math so you know exactly how much volume of ink to inkjet. Okay, you have to do a little work. This is not going to be, a cakewalk. It's going to require a little bit of work, but imagine you will be able to print without the need of a chip any longer. You need that initial chip simply for color recognition, but that is it. That's all you will ever need it for. So pretty awesome that we'll be able to continue using printers such as these, and even their newer ones are able to be disabled for ink monitoring process. So the 300, the 200, the same thing. Now, inks for those two models. Oh, Canon went behind our backs and did quite a few modifications on the inks. So what at first sounded or appeared to be an easy task, that's not the case. So the ink sets for those two printers is going to take a while, folks. It's going to take a while because, yeah, they did some things. It's not just one color, okay? All right, so basically what they have done is adjusted the densities, let's just say. And in order to do that, you have to have specific raw dye products, which the third-party companies simply do not have access to, okay? These are all proprietary, made specifically for Canon. And in the case of Epson, I assume the same thing happens there. All right, so that is it for now. By the way, I'm going to be doing tomorrow at 3 p.m. So I'm going to load this today. This is Tuesday. I'm going to load this today. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'm going to do a little bit of a live stream. I had a problem that has never occurred in the past. Over 90 live streams, maybe more, I don't know. And what happened was that YouTube, when I then terminated the live stream, did not create a video. I ended up with only 9 seconds worth of video. I gave it time and it remained at 9 seconds. So obviously something went wrong. I hope it wasn't on my end. Like I said, this has never happened before. Maybe it was at their end and maybe it was just a fluke. So I'm going to do like an hour maybe. I will go ahead and refill this cartridge with the 80 ml of magenta ink live, and we'll discuss about the ink problems and so forth, and then we'll go ahead and terminate and then wait. Basically, you have to wait to see if YouTube displays it as a full 1 hour video, let's just say. My broadcasting software did say that I was on for 3 hours and a few minutes, but YouTube then immediately just created a 9-second video. That's not right. So what does that mean? That only the live viewers that were watching the show, if you will, while it was streaming, they're the only ones that are able to see it. Anyone else at a later date cannot see it. So it's deleted, it's gone. But I gotta solve this problem, because this will be a huge pain in the you-know-what if this continues to happen. Alright, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Happy printing, everybody. Bye-bye.